This is food. This is beans. Adrian, Squid Game. This is a closer look episode for Squid Game, which is obviously a Netflix series that has taken the world by storm. And we are going to look at it in a more spoilery way than we looked at it on episode 67 of our regular Split Focus of Film and TV podcast.
What?
Adrian, what do you mean what?
We're doing this? We're spoiling it? We're diving into the spoilery territory, Simon, with Netflix's most popular show of all time? Question mark.
Yeah, did my office not send you the memo?
No.
Because we don't talk outside this podcast, so did we not
never
talk about this?
No.
Oh, well, now I'm telling you now. Are you okay with that? Because, I mean, we're doing this on air. Are we going to do this or what?
Baby, I'm okay with it. Simon Eating. I'm okay with it.
Well, that's great. That's great.
So what did you think of this show?
I loved it. I wasn't necessarily a huge fan of the ending. I did like it, but I just feel like it left something to be desired potentially. But I did love it overall. I think it was great. We both watched it with subtitles as opposed to dub because we thought that the English dub was terrible. And I think you still agree with that.
I do.
And we just kind of listened to that red light, green light robot narration in English for the first time, and it literally says red light, green light when that's not what the doll says in Korean in the actual show. If you listen to it with subs, which is a little strange, it says something like along the lines of
"Better hurry up, bitch, or else."
The hibiscus flower
is what it says.
The hibiscus flower has bloomed.
Oh yeah, that seems right.
More literally, not quite the same, but it's a rough translation from Korean. I just find that there's no way that this show could have possibly been better with dubs. And I actually had a family member watch the show and they were like, "This is terrible," and they watched it with dub. And Netflix defaults to it being on dub right out of the gate, which I just think is just again not the correct way. Just put it on sub first and let somebody change it to dub if they want to. That would be what I would recommend for the English translation. But anyway, I don't know. That's my take.
Yeah, I agree completely, man. I when I started this show, it was set to English, and I mentioned this on our main show, but the show begins with like kind of just like narration over like a game, and I was like, like this is interesting. Like I didn't expect the show to be in English. And then when the main character starts speaking Jihan and English is coming out of his mouth, I was like, oh, this just does not seem right, and I swapped it over. And it's interesting because I feel like the dubbing actually takes away from the show in a weird way, because there is English in the show and
other languages, not just English. And I think that's important to note too. Like it does take away if everything's in English, then you don't know who's supposed to be speaking English. Is that kind of what you're looking at?
Exactly. Yeah. Like it seems, like I feel like it would take away from it and make things a little bit more confusing if it's all in one language. Because I don't know, like the more the show progresses, the more you realize it's like this is a more of an international thing that's occurring, I guess. And like it probably isn't only happening over in South Korea. And again, they bring in these people that are, you presume they're probably from the States or something like that. And again, they talk in English. And I feel like if the show was in English the entire time, it would, again, just take away from it and add to this like level of confusion. The mastermind, the guy with the black mask, I forget his name. But he's the first character that you actually see talk in English. And there's a very evident, like accent that he has when he is speaking in English. And I'm curious that in the English dubbing, if they just dubbed over the, like him talking in English, you know what I mean? Or if it's the same guy that like dubbed it in English. I'm not too sure. But again, I think watching this in subbed is the right way to go. I think it makes the most sense. And Yeah, like I think you mentioned this on our main show that maybe you don't get as much out of the acting because you also have to read. But I think the way the actors emote and the way the actors like say their lines so aggressively in some cases, it really makes for an awesome viewing experience. And again, I can't imagine watching it in English. So
I think I said the opposite.
did you?
Pretty sure I said that with dubs on, it's impossible to read the acting because it's a different actor, most likely, in every
Oh, it is. Yeah, for
scenario,
sure. Yeah.
voicing the actors in English. And so you can't really get the full breadth of what they're doing because two actors are acting for one part.
Mhm.
And that just doesn't really play as well, arguably.
Yeah, for sure.
So that was my argument there.
No, yeah. Like, sorry, I wasn't like saying like in terms of English dub versus subbed. I was just saying in general that like you don't necessarily get exactly what the actor is doing because you don't understand the language. Is I think
Oh,
what you
that I
mentioned.
agree with. Yeah. You just can't. Yeah, that's a tricky thing about any foreign language film or TV series. I feel like it's harder to like because we don't have the perspective of knowing the language because not every language is translated as literally like that hibiscus flower bloom thing is like I don't know. It's loose. It's like a loose translation, so it's difficult. But we're all humans in the end, and I feel like again you can see the emotion, especially from like the main actor of the series who just did again a fantastic job. Like Lee Jung-Jae. By the way, just let's get this out of the way right away. We are obviously English speakers on this show, and our pronunciations of these names is not obviously meant to be any disrespect. We just suck at pronouncing names. As you would probably know if you listen to the regular Split Focus of Film and TV podcast, we literally created a segment just to, have Google tell us how to pronounce certain names, like Mads Mikkelsen. So,
Yep, Mads Mikkelsen. Yeah.
right. So, anyways, regardless, he was amazing, in my opinion. I think you probably agree with that. I just think there's moments in that there's just like devastating because of him just like sob crying. And yeah, he's just amazing as Ji-yoon. Like he's so good. Like Jun-Jae.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I can't agree with you anymore, man. Like I think his portrayal of Ji-yoon as a character is phenomenal. I love Ji-yoon and I love the journey that he kind of goes on and how much his character kind of changes. You start off with this character and he's an awful father. He's just like this piece of shit, gambling addict, kind of a dingus. And you see him with his daughter, and his daughter's just so nice to him, even though he doesn't really deserve his daughter loving him so much, and the way she makes him feel nice, even though he's just kind of a piece of shit, and the things that he keeps on doing to very obviously like not provide a great experience for his daughter. It's kind of depressing to see. And again, I think his character development throughout the series is fantastic. You slowly like him more and more, and you see him becoming a better person. And although he's not necessarily a good guy in the beginning, he has his morals straight. Like he's not a bad dude. And again, he continuously in this series just kind of shows the viewer and his peers in the show that he's not a bad bloke, and he will do anything to save his friends. And again, it kind of bites him in the ass in some situations, but yeah, I really love his character. And again, the actor that does his portrayal is phenomenal. Again, like that storyline with his like mother is like so sad as well, and like how she knows that he's kind of a piece of shit and that he's a bad guy, but obviously it's like this unconditional love that his mother gives him. And again, he just keeps on failing. And then, he finds himself in the situation to like join this game where he can win millions of dollars to realistically like to support his daughter and to be able to visit his daughter that's going to move to the States, but also to, like make sure his mom gets surgery and everything like that. And again, I really like Ji-hoon as a character. I think he's compelling and he's not, I don't want to say the odd man out, but he's an interesting character to make the main character, if that makes any sense. He's flawed. He's very flawed. And I think that's what makes him so compelling.
Yeah. Like, it's interesting because I feel like, I don't know, you talk about character development, but I'm not sure how much he really developed as a character. Or more specifically, I don't think he really developed as a person. the character development aspect, like by the writers of developing the characters to three-dimensional characters is there, but I wonder how he's developed as a person. Like, I think that stuff was inside the whole time. Like, he lost his job because that factory was shutting down and they were protesting that. And we didn't know that stuff about his life. And that's the reason why he had to let go of his family, or that's why he fell on hard times in the real world. That was a huge backstory that we didn't know. And I feel like we judged him too harshly, potentially in the beginning. It made me think about the way I judged him right from the get-go because of that. The reason I say I don't know if he changed or developed as a person, that all of this stuff might have just been inside the whole time, is simply because look at the end of the show. He decided not to get on the plane. And I don't understand. Get on the plane and then come back and then fix this. Why would you not get on the plane first? Maybe it's a narrative, like a plot convenience thing, but I just don't really buy that. You're about to get on a plane to see your daughter who haven't seen for months, presumably, right? Or 6 months, right? They did a time jump.
I think it's like a year.
What's happening there?
Yeah,
they time jumped quite a bit. And so I just don't really buy that he necessarily developed, but I do think that he didn't lose himself in the game. And that's the beauty of it, is that almost not everyone, because there's a lot of people that didn't get a chance to lose themselves, but a lot of the characters potentially lost themselves, especially his friend, who actually, I don't know if he did lose himself. Yeah, Sung-woo, but I think he might have been like that the whole time because he seemed like a dick right from the first game. But
yeah, that's actually a really good point. Yeah, like, you know, he is the character that didn't lose himself, but at the end of the day, he's still a shit father. Like, even in the last episode, like he started off as a bad father, and the at least the season ends with him being a bad father again. And, you know, like, instead of going to see his freaking daughter, he's like, no, I'm going to stop this. It's not called the Squid Game, whatever. I'm going to stop this from happening again other people.
It is called the Squid Game.
Is it called the Squid Game? I thought the last game was called the Squid Game. I'm pretty
sure. I think that he translated it to be the Squid Game because those papers, remember when the cop is looking through those filing cabinets?
Yeah.
It says the Squid Game winners at the top.
Oh.
So I'm pretty sure it is called the Squid Games or something like that.
Maybe the last game is always the Squid Game. Maybe that's what it was referring to.
Yeah, it must be. Yeah. He's very happy-go-lucky, right? He's like a happy-go-lucky kind of guy, and he's down on his luck and he doesn't really know how to adjust properly. And then it's strange. Like, I would say he did get better as a person, but I don't know how much better. We don't know that until we potentially see a second season, which I argue we will get just based on the way it ended.
Yeah, for sure.
But
it is also quite frustrating because, like, after he wins, like, there's a year time jump and he doesn't spend any of that money that he won. Like, he won literal millions, and he didn't give any of that money to, like, Sung-woo's mom. He didn't give any of that money to, like, Sae-byuk's brother. Sae-byuk being, like, the North Korean, like, defector girl, who I really love as a character. And it's kind of just like, what the fuck are you doing, man? Like, yeah, like, there is this level of guilt. But I just don't see why he didn't help out the people that he knew he should help out, if that makes sense. And honestly,
right, and he just left the game. Well, I guess that's devastating. He just lost his mom. I understand that, but it's like a long time passed, and it's like, really, man?
Yeah, it's a whole year.
Like, if you had this much guilt, you'd think you'd use it, but maybe that the idea is it's blood money, right? That money, he received that money because they didn't leave the game, because apparently if you leave the game, all the money goes to the people who died. So I don't know, maybe it was guilt, but then again, he promised like Sae-byuk that he would help.
Yeah, he never actually explicitly promised her, which makes the, like, her storyline a little bit more sad because she doesn't actually know whether or not he was going to do it. He never, like, promised her or said that he would do it. He just told her, like, not to talk like that because he expected her to make it to the end. And yeah, it's a little bit depressing. The one actually, like, plot line that was never really explained on the topic of him winning all that money is the show kind of starts off with these, like, loan sharks beating the shit out of him and being like, you have 1 month to pay this back. And he, like, signs it with his own blood. But that plot line never gets kind of explained. He never pays it off, or at least we don't see him pay it off. And if he did pay it off, he didn't use the money that he won from the Squid Game to do it. So that is one thing, like, one loose plot thread that I, like, picked up on where I was like, this is actually the one thing I didn't like about the show, where I'm just like, they set kind of this thing up and it was never really explained, unfortunately.
I don't know. Like, he's living on the street, so they can't find him. I think he would have invited being beat up by those guys.
Yeah.
You know, he's such on the verge of collapse. Like, his life is like, that's basically his rock bottom. Really. So I don't know. It's interesting, but I don't think he ever went home.
Yeah.
So they couldn't find him because he's just not around.
Yeah, fair point.
Plus, he kept disappearing for months doing the Squid Game in the first place. It's funny you mentioned things that bothered you. There's one specific thing that I maybe it was a translation issue or maybe I misunderstood. But from my understanding, when they voted to leave the game, they were supposed to start over. That's what they literally said would happen. If you leave, you'll start over again. And the money that was left in the piggy bank was supposed to go to the people who died in red light, green light. They didn't start over again. They didn't play red light, green light again when they came back.
Oh.
Yeah, the piggy bank was still full of cash from that game. And they actually came back with the same number of people that they had left with.
No,
So it was like,
it's less people.
sorry.
Yeah, I think they say like 18 or whatever people.
Like, they
don't
didn't come back. But that also doesn't make sense. Like, I thought you were starting over again. Like, you didn't.
Yeah, I actually didn't pick up on that. That's a good call out.
So I was very confused. Like, when you start the game over, because that does make an impact a little bit. Like, you'd be whittling it down. But I guess I don't know. It helps. They should have just maybe not said that, or maybe not translated it that way in the subtitles, because that could have been a literal translation issue. I realized
it's possible.
But I did notice that. I thought that was a little odd.
But yeah. Again, I really like the journey that Ji-hun goes on. In terms of, I guess, like other characters, like Sung-woo, we brought him up. Sung-woo might actually be my favorite character in the series.
Oh, look at that. An asshole character that you like. You do that sometimes, and I find it funny. I'm just going to call that out.
Yeah.
You mentioned, for the audience that doesn't know you, you say you don't like asshole characters. That's a thing you do not like explicitly. And this guy's explicitly an asshole character. There's not much redeeming about him, really. He's a dick.
He's interesting. He's three-dimensional, and I really like it. And again, his like for him, the ends justify the means, and that's kind of like what his character explanation is. He's a phenomenal character. I really love him, and again, he is a dick. I will admit that. I am hypocritical when it comes to that sort of stuff, but he's a dick for good reason, as opposed to like James Bond, who I always bring up. James Bond's just a fucking prick. Whereas Sung-woo, yeah, he's an asshole, but
Except James Bond actually saves lives. This guy just screws over people.
Not real lives. It's a fictional movie.
Oh, this isn't fiction.
No, this is Squid real Game. Simon. Squid Game's real Simon. But
if Squid Game were real, would you take part in it? That was a thing that floated around on the internet.
No, I would lose.
Yeah, no. I could potentially win. I would never do it though. It's idiotic.
Oh, if I thought that I could win, I'd probably do it. I love watching dead bodies fall next to me. I'm so used to it. But yeah, I just don't. I don't think I could win. It's too
selfish. It'd be the same reason I don't think that Ji-yoon would ever go back to do it again. Assuming he found himself in a spot in which he didn't have any money again, just because it's just you're murdering the other people. You're forced to by the end. It seems like they also framed it, which is brilliant. They framed it as, whoever wins will split the money. There's no way for anyone, like for everyone to win, or for half the people to win, because it's not the way the game is framed up. It's not like every game is like red light, green light. You're going into games in which you literally face off against each other. So there's no way that you could each, you know what I'm saying? It's impossible.
Yeah, that's a good point. I feel like when the show starts off, it's almost initially framed, or at least the people that are taking part in the Squid Game think that
they do.
There could be multiple winners, but realistically, yeah, like it is explicitly said that like no, there's going to be one winner, and yeah, it's interesting to kind of look at.
No, it isn't.
It isn't.
It isn't. They say you're going to split the winnings between each other who win.
Oh yeah, good call.
That's what's so brilliant.
I guess like what I'm thinking of is when the cop Jun-Ho, like when he like is like looking through those files, it's always just like the winners of the Squid Game, and it's always just one person in each of them.
That's what shocked me. That's when I saw that, I'm like, oh, they're just lying. Yeah. And it's a great, and I know that people talked about this, but like it's a great metaphor for like capitalism. Like only one person rises to the top that screwed everyone else over.
Yeah.
Like 453 people died to make Ji-yoon the winner. It's nuts.
Yeah. Yeah, it is pretty nuts. I really like Jun-Ho as a character, actually, since we're on the topic of him. Like that plot line. To be fair, when I went into the show, I didn't know what to expect at all. But that sort of plot line that was happening in the background is just not something I ever expected, and I don't know why. when this kind of like plot was kind of introduced, and Jun-Ho is like, oh, I'm looking for my brother. I did guess that the Black Mask, like the mastermind, would be his brother for whatever reason, but it was still interesting when that was kind of revealed. And honestly, I feel like in the show, there's a lot of foreshadowing that happens in this show, and there are actually multiple lines that make it seem like the Black Mask guy knows who the cop is, like Jun-Ho is. And I think it's like it's brought to the forefront when he's like specifically says like don't kill him to the other triangle face, square face, circle faced people. And again, I really like his I really like that storyline, and this actually kind of brings it up. Do you think Jun-Ho is dead, Simon?
So my belief is actually whenever any creator or writer, when they write into the plot line that someone is shot in the shoulder and falls off a cliff and they never find the body, the person's alive.
Mm-hmm.
That is like they've shot everyone else in the head. Almost every single person is shot in the head, and he's not coincidentally shot in the head. I mean, it makes it pretty obvious, and it sets up a second season pretty well, which is good too.
Yeah,
so that's not what I believe.
I feel like this show does a really good job of showing people die.
Oh yeah,
like they specifically show about. Yeah, I know it's a weird thing to say, but I feel like this show does a good job in like literally showing everyone that dies. And Jun-Ho is one of the few characters that isn't like shown to actually be killed.
They don't never look for the body.
Exactly.
It's a weird thing. They don't present it, but they present the bodies so often of all the other main kind of characters that are participating in the game that die. So yeah, I agree.
Well, that's exactly it. And like, the one character that we think dies, Ilnam, I believe that's how you pronounce it. The old man, we actually don't specifically see him die.
Good point.
And when the camera sort of pans back in that episode, we don't see his dead body either.
I'm okay with that because it's such a touchy subject to talk about that for a moment. Like that episode 6, I believe.
Yeah.
It's just so emotional for me at least.
Is.
And my girlfriend, like we were crying because there's like that moment with
Ali
Biak as well,
yeah,
which is just, and Ali of course too, but like everyone goes through the ringer. It's so heartfelt, and so again, you mentioned the character development, but like that's a massive character development episode for sure. But yeah, they don't show the body, but it's almost like a mercy to the audience, which I thought was pretty great. So I didn't suspect that he was alive because of the mercy that I thought the creator was giving to the audience. By the way, I just want to briefly point out I was mentioning on episode 67 that Hwang Dong-hyuk, the creator, and I know I butchered his name again, but he actually wrote and directed and created this series. So I mentioned that it wasn't the director last episode that lost all his teeth while he was creating the series. It was the creator, or vice versa. They're one and the same. Okay. So that's a thing that happened apparently, is that the creator lost his teeth, 4 of his teeth. I don't know how that happened, from stress due to the stress of making the show.
Yeah.
So that's a thing. But I thought like in general, the whole thing in terms of detail is brilliant. You mentioned that like you didn't believe that the cop situation would be shown, and like that was a storyline that would ever exist. I agree. I just feel like I thought it was going to be something frivolous, this show. I thought it was going to be something like, it wasn't going to make me feel emotional. I wasn't going to cry on episode 6. That wasn't something that I thought was going to happen. But each of these characters is completely developed, and it wasn't just like, I find that the Hunger Games movies, or even to some extent Harry Potter, is more frivolous than this. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a weird thing. Each of these characters are extremely well developed. Maybe not Harry Potter, but definitely from what I remember of the Hunger Games movies, it's just they don't develop the characters enough. It feels like they're moving in for the spectacle. It's all about the central spectacle of what the Hunger Games are. And this is not necessarily just about the games. In fact, they have full episodes that don't have a game in them at all. And you just are completely interested and intrigued by those episodes and each of the characters in these episodes. Obviously the games are also tremendously interesting too, but it's masterfully created, and that's the brilliant thing about it. If it was just the games, it's like, oh, we get to see people die. Oh, someone falls off a glass bridge and dies. Oh, look at their bloody brain all over the floor. That's not why we're watching it. We're watching it for the development, and the rest of it is all kind of, helpful, supplementary spectacle, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, exactly, man. Like, yeah, you're watching it for the characters, and I do agree. Like, this show is masterful in its own right. Like, the writing in it is phenomenal, and again, like I mentioned this, like there's so much foreshadowing in the show. I actually started rewatching it because I wanted to like prep for this episode and see if I picked up on anything, and it's quite interesting because on the wall of the auditorium that like all the characters are in, actually, like that's painted on the wall, is every single game that they're going to play, which is super interesting as well. There's like these little...
But aren't the games just on the wall at the end when they've already played them, or they painted on afterwards?
No, I think they're on there at the beginning, if I recall correctly. Like they're on the wall, and it's like, oh, that's super fucking cool. Like it's setting this sort of thing up. And again, with like the old man as well, like Il-nam, like there's a scene when the riot is essentially happening in like the auditorium where the characters start killing one another, and he's like crying or he's like freaking out, and it shows that he like pisses himself. He has an empty water bottle next to him, which kind of like foreshadows like, oh, this guy knew exactly what was going to happen. Like this guy is the mastermind, and he's planning every little step, and he's just playing all these characters, which is super freaking cool.
Yeah, it's neat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very well thought out. It's awesome. Like it's surprising how it lacks the frivolousness that I thought it was going to be, for sure. So going back to that just briefly, because you did mention Il-nam, and you thought that he, they didn't show the fact that he got killed. He didn't get shot in the head in episode 6.
Yeah,
explicitly. We didn't see it. Did you believe that he was alive? Is that something you believe?
Oh no, definitely not. Like I expected him to be dead. Like the reveal at the end where it's like, oh, Il-nam is actually the mastermind and he's still alive. I was like, what in the fuck? And then as soon as I saw that, like as soon as that reveal happens in the end, I'm like, holy shit, we never actually see him die, whereas we see everyone else die. And then that's kind of why I thought Jun-Ho was still alive as well, because we don't explicitly see him die. Like that last little reveal is what made me think Jun-Ho was still alive, realistically.
Oh.
Did you ever expect him to be alive, like at the end? Like
Il-nam, no.
No.
Jun-Ho for sure. I thought he was alive.
Yeah.
Like I was like, okay, he's gonna come back in the season. Like I thought it wasn't a season 2 thing. I thought they were gonna. I didn't know how much they really planned for a season 2, but now it seems more deliberate.
Yeah.
I only realized that they were gonna do a season 2 at the end, just based on what Ji-yoon chose to do, not getting on the plane.
Yeah.
But no, I didn't see that coming at all. I was shocked when he like gets the card again. And it says Gunbu or whatever, like the marbles champion of the neighborhood little thing on that business card. I was like, what? I couldn't believe it. I was like, he must be the mastermind. It's also awesome that Ji-yoon just figured it out pretty instantly after that. He's like, it has to be. I'm in like this expensive apartment building, and he's got the entire floor to himself, and he's got this tiny area sectioned off just for his hospital bed. It's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
That I found that a little bit, I don't know. There's something about him being alive that kind of bothered me a little, but they explained it very well, and so I accepted it. I thought that especially because they flashed back a little bit when after he died, they showed a brief flashback.
Mm-hmm.
So I could believe it. It's just that was a little bit strange. It felt a little unnecessary because it kind of took a little bit away from his death. Like watching it again, I imagine it's going to feel a little bit more shallow, that episode 6 potentially, because he's kind of playing him the whole time. And it was that relationship that they're building the whole time between Ji-yoon and Il-nam is it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. He has a lot of respect for Il-nam, it seems, and like he came there because of him, but it changes the story.
Yeah, it's almost like a father-son relationship. Like Il-nam even says like multiple times, like oh your father must have beat you because like I beat my son for doing the same thing. Like there's like a few nods to like this like sort of father-son relationship, and it's very obvious like Ji-hoon like has like so much respect for Il-nam and cares about him so much. And like I agree with you on that front.
Yeah, that's the only thing is it takes that away a little bit if you were to watch it again. But on the first pass through, I'm sure everyone will feel that's the same feelings we did.
Yeah. Well, honestly, like initially for me, I was like, when it was revealed that he was alive, I was like, well, this, like, why was he acting specific ways in these specific scenarios? Like, how did he, like, was he mentally prepared to die? And I think the biggest, the game where like he probably could have died the easiest was like the tug of war episode. And I was kind of just like, this could have gone sideways for him very quickly. And initially I was like, this doesn't really make too much sense. But again, he's actually the one that gives the advice on how to win this tug of war game. It's these games that he played when he was a kid. And he's like, no, it's not about strength. It's about skill. And then he's the one that kind of, I mean, to be fair, Sung Woo does that like last call is like, take 3 steps forward, and they fuck those dudes up. But yeah, again, I initially I was like, it almost seemed like a plot hole, like in my mind, even though it definitely is not.
Why is it a plot hole?
Like, again, that it just seemed convenient. Like, it was like, oh, surprise, like he's actually the bad bloke. And I was like, well, like, would he have put himself in these dangerous situations specifically?
Yeah, because he was already gonna die.
Well, yeah. Like, I mean, he is. That is a thing.
I think that's the reason. It's just because he's already about to die anyway.
Well, again, like he obviously wanted to survive, and he did in the end. And like he survived in that marble episode. Like, did he expect to get that far? It's an interesting sort of thought. And yeah, I don't know. I'm glad that I think that reveal was actually very well done. And it was shocking. And it's interesting as well because he is the guy that he's the final vote at the end of the first episode or whatever episode, second episode, for them to go back, like to not continue playing the game. I think it's like a 50-50 split. And then he makes that final vote for everyone not to continue playing the game. And you're kind of like, like, why would he do that? And I think it's because he wanted everyone to take part in this game. Like, he wanted these people to come back and do this.
He wanted them to want it.
Exactly.
They didn't know what it was until after. And then you want it. And I feel like he had a better perspective on their psychological state, like each of the players' psychological state, which is cool. I like the idea that he's number one, because he's literally the leader of this stupid game. So he's literally number one because of that. That's a direct hint to the fact that he's the guy, because he is the first player, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's freaking neat. I really like Il-nam as a character.
I do question it a bit, like though. Like I do find it's not a cop out per se. It just, I don't know. It seems like it was an unnecessary piece of plot that was thrown in for twist's sake, and it's good. And they did think it through, like from the beginning, and I appreciate that. But I don't know if it was necessary, because I do think it took away from again, as I was saying, that relationship. So that's the only thing. Like I'm on the fence whether that was the greatest option. It was also disappointing that Ji-yoon doesn't get on the plane. It's just that feels to me like, why are you doing this though? Just get on the plane and then come back. You know they're watching you. The guy just literally said to you, get on the plane, so you know obviously he's watching you right now. If you turn around, he's like, it's not going to be good. Is a lot less likelihood that they have people in the US watching you potentially. So I don't know.
Yeah,
that's a weird thing. And then just because I'm on the topic of things I didn't love, I did find that the American actors, I don't know if it was the writing or them, but they seemed not good in terms of the lines they were saying. It felt unnatural, and I don't know what it is, but they were saying things. Do you agree? Like, it felt jarring that when they were speaking, it's like, ha 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 ha, Jimmy, you didn't, you chose 69? Oh, ha ha, like, I don't know.
Yeah, man. That's actually one thing I agree with you on. Like, yeah, like definitely. I think those characters were the least compelling, and it did seem weird and out of place.
It would have been cool if
they almost seemed like caricatures. Like,
I know,
it's
which is fine because they are kind of caricatures. It would almost be better if they were like, really cool guest actors, but we never see their face.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it would have been neat if it was like
Edward Norton.
Yeah.
At the end of.
Yeah, we got Edward Norton under one of the masks or something. And like, we just have or get really cool character actors that can wear these masks and play it off. I just felt like the casting of the South Korean actors, like, I feel like it's spot on in terms of their acting ability. Like, they're really good. Mm-hmm. I thought it was really good. But then those guys just seemed like they just were, I don't know. They didn't seem realistic. They just, their lines didn't make sense. The 69 jokes. And I was like, is this supposed to be funny? And I get what it isn't. It isn't. You're supposed to think that they're atrocious human beings, but
Exactly.
I just don't know that they would find it that funny because it's just the way they were speaking, and it almost like felt like, as we kind of talked about, look, with the movie Old or whatever, they felt like they weren't real human beings in the way they were talking. Like humans don't talk, like people don't talk like this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, like maybe they're just so rich that the money's gone to their head, and that's why they don't seem like regular human beings. Like maybe that's kind of what they were going for. But yeah,
I know, but if it seemed like forced acting, you'd still kind of they're still socialite type people. I feel like they could be assholes without being. I don't know, they felt too awkward to the point where it just felt like bad acting, and there was not that many lines there. So that was like the weakest acting in that show, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, 100%. But yeah, like in terms of great acting, I guess let's talk about Allie. Like we talked about episode 6, and goddamn, man, Allie was done dirty. I loved Allie as a character. He's one of the shining like characters in the show. One of the good people that never really broke. They were like, he was consistently a good guy. And, you know, it's even shown in the first episode where he saves Ji-hoon's life, when he's like holding him up during red light, green light. And it's like, oh man, like he did so much. And then Sung-woo fucked him over, like straight up fucked him over. And it's really sad because, you know, like, you know, Allie's like backstory a bit. Like he has like a son, like a newly born son. He has his wife. And then, you know, like I guess like pushes that one guy into like a machine, and that guy gets his hand crushed, and he steals the money and gives it to his like wife and kid so they can escape. But it still just feels like, oh man, like his wife and kid are never going to know what happened to him. And he really didn't deserve it. And it's interesting that Sung-woo was the guy that fucked him over, because Sung-woo was actually the guy that showed him kindness first in the series. Like at you know, when they initially leave the game, like Sung-woo like buys him ramen and gives him money for the bus and stuff like that. And yeah, I don't know, that really fucked me up, actually. Like I was very upset about that, and I did cry. Like I genuinely cried. And again, like Sung-woo he's such a great character, and I love him for, like, you know, the decisions that he makes, and he's such a smart character for what he does to Allie. But I just wish he didn't fucking do it. You know what I mean?
He screwed people over repeatedly, game after game after game, though. Mm-hmm. Like he basically signed the death warrant of like Ji-hoon in the sugar shape game, like, and everyone else. He's like, why don't we go into different lines? Why though? Like he just didn't want to feel empathy. He didn't want to have people he liked in this game because he wanted to kill them all. Like we knew right away that this guy's a dick, a wolf in sheep's clothing. He's just a terrible person, and there's not really any redeeming quality. Yes, the acting is really good, but he's a dick. There's just I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I disagree with you. Like, I think he does have redeeming qualities because he's doing everything to make sure it's like, well, I mean, he wants to save himself. Like, he's a selfish human being.
He doesn't care about anyone.
At the same time, like, he doesn't want his mother to be fucked over, because he even says like, oh, like I gave my mother's like home and shop up and stuff like that. And yeah,
that's what he said.
Yeah, he definitely did say that.
I don't believe a word that comes out of that guy's mouth. That guy's a dick.
Whoa.
Obviously, he's the worst. He's the devil in disguise. He's the guy that's the worst out of all the people there. He's the worst guy.
Well, yeah, no, I agree with you. Like, he is the villain of the show. And, you know, what's the guy's name? Deok-Su, which is like the gangster guy. He's kind of posed to be the villain of the show. Like, he's this fucking prick. He's this asshole. And he's just so obviously the bad guy in the show. But realistically, it was Sung-woo all along. Like, Sung-woo's the real villain of the series. And Deok-Su is just there to Deok-Su. Again, I apologize for butchering the names of these people. But like, yeah, like, again, he was just posed as the villain to, I guess, make you focus on someone else. And it comes as a surprise that Sung-woo is actually the bad guy. Like, once Deok-Su is dead, you realize like, oh shit.
I just don't agree with that. I just wasn't surprised. You were surprised. He already screwed over Allie at that point. By the time that Deok-Su was knocked off the
no, I'm aware. I'm just saying, like, it's this slow burn as opposed to this very obvious, like, Deok-Su is the bad guy. You know, like it's in your face that he's the bad guy. And Sung-woo is like this slow, almost like corruption. He's slowly getting worse and worse with each episode. And yeah, obviously by the time Ali dies, you're like, God fucking damn it. Like this guy is just out for himself. But
I was worried about him more than Deok-Su because he's obvious. It's the obvious choice. He's clearly a gangster. There was no reason to screw someone over on the sugar game. It's just not, there was no point at all. And he didn't know that by the end of the game that only one winner would come out on top. That's just not something that was known. So why screw over the people that you're with, that you just banded together with to create this team? Like, it's just so weird. It was like so jarring to me. I was like, what's going on? The other guy you knew you couldn't trust because he literally would kill you right as soon as he, you stepped in front of him and he could stab you in the back. So they're both villains. That's a bunch of terrible people in this game, clearly. Like the guy who knows how to freaking know what tempered glass looks like in different light, but he didn't tell anyone. Why? It's like, why didn't you just say it so we can get through? But then again, I think at that point, a lot of the characters realize that only one of them is going to get out of this entire Squid Game alive. So I don't know.
Yeah.
And we have differing opinions on that. I know you love Sung-woo based on our conversation here, but again, he's a very interesting character. Like, don't get me wrong. He's great, and then acting is really good too. Like Park Hae-soo did a great job. Again, butchering the names, but he's really good, and like everyone was really good. Did you notice actually it was the main character from Train to Busan? Is the dude on the subway platform?
Yeah, it is. It is the main character from Train to Busan. I forget the actor's name, but yeah, he's the guy that gets Ji-hun into the game in the first place, which is super interesting.
Yeah, it's cool. And he sees him again, which is neat as well. I thought he was going to have more of a play for some reason than the rest of the series, just because I think it's probably wrong, but I feel like he might have been the only one I recognized from a previous property. I just don't watch that many South Korean films or TV series, but yeah. Yeah,
I'm in the same boat with you. I think he was the only person I recognized as well. In terms of other characters, we talked about Deok-Su. There is, what's her name? Han Min Yao or whatever. Again, I apologize so much for not knowing how to say these people's names, but like, I really like her character. She's interesting. She's that like super loud, person that's like, oh, I'm good at everything except for the things I'm not. Like, I love that sort of line. And it's interesting, her relationship with Deok-Su and how like she's so obviously trying to use him, but like he's obviously just using her. And it's like a super interesting relationship between the two of them. And again, like, this show just does foreshadowing so well. Like, she specifically says, like, if you betray me, I will kill you. And obviously that's kind of like, well, that's how he dies. Like, she kills him.
It's awesome.
Literally.
Yeah,
it's fucking
I was waiting for that to happen because I was like, that's like the, I don't know, the poison in Breaking Bad or whatever. It just feels like you're always thinking it's got to be used somewhere. Yeah, it's like showing a gun in the first act of a play, and then by the third act, you're like, if no one's used it yet, there's a reason why they show the gun on stage. There's got to be a reason, and then they again use it. I just find like that was a great foreshadowing. I agree. Like I loved that was in it because you kind of know that if she didn't kill him, it kind of would have been disappointing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I agree completely.
People actually, as a violence perspective, people really kind of don't like the show for that. I think that would be the biggest deterrent of why people wouldn't watch this show, arguably, which I find interesting. But I think it's violence kind of used it's used definitely a lot, but I think it's used in the right way because of all the points we talked about with character development. If it was just this frivolous nonsense like Saw in the later movies, because I know you like Saw 1.
The first movie was a good movie.
Yeah, I just feel like then it wouldn't be as useful. I feel like the violence is warranted because it really does. It serves a good purpose in the context of what this series is, which I'm impressed about. I find it's put together so well, and like all of the set dressing. Like, there's a funny thing. I don't know if you've ever gone to this. It's probably not, but there's a place where I used to live in Ontario. There was this party place that they called Mad Hatters.
No, I've never been.
And it's this basically like these multiple rooms you go into, and it reminds me of that staircase room and the various rooms they go into. Like there's places with like a jungle gym and like these like a mirror room. There's like various ridiculous rooms. It's like a party place you'd go with it's like 5 to 12-year-olds, and they walk you through these different things. There's like mazes inside and stuff like that. It kind of reminded me of that in the way that it was built. That staircase with all the colors is iconic. So are the costumes. Like it's wild, and like people obviously are gonna scoop those up for Halloween.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be like the biggest fucking, like everyone's gonna wear those costumes for Halloween. It's quite interesting.
Yeah.
Even my one of my coworkers, he was saying like how his son wants to dress up as one of the characters from Squid Game. I was like, dude, you didn't show your son this fucking show, did you?
Yeah.
Because his son's like 7 or 8.
Yeah.
He's like, oh no, like he's not allowed to watch it. He just sees that like his friends want to do it. I'm like, okay, good, because I was like, do not show this to your child.
I wouldn't. I don't know if I would even let my son do that, because it's like it's going to influence you to want to watch it. It's probably not the greatest.
Yeah, exactly.
But the point I was making is costume design and the music as well is also extremely well put together.
Oh yeah,
like Jung-Jae. I don't know. Again, terrible pronunciation, but on my part, but so good. And it's iconic too. Like every time now I'm on Netflix and I like skip past Squid Game because I've seen it, I hear the music briefly in the little trailer, and I'm like, oh man, that's another piece that's just so good in this. Costumes, the set design. There's that hallway, that rich hallway where the organizer dude, he's like answers the phone. That hallway is just majestic. It's just beautifully made. It's like these things weren't an afterthought. They were well thought out, and that's not like a regular type of room or hallway. I just think that the effort into that, and you mentioned the foreshadowing on the walls of having the games displayed on the wall of that whatever giant room they all sleep
auditorium.
Yeah, the weird, residence area is fantastic. Even like that last scene where they're sitting there eating their dinner, where they like lay everything out. It's just very well thought out.
There's so many like deliberate like aesthetic choices that really just add value to the series. It kind of reminds me of one of my favorite video game series, like Danganronpa, where it's like this. It's this like very colorful sort of aesthetic for a very dark and dire setting is the best way to put it. And yeah, again, I think it's done like incredibly well. I love the costumes. I think they're just great. And like you said, everyone and their goddamn mother is going to be wearing this for Halloween.
Yeah, I know. Are you going to get a costume? Oh, you're going to do Johnny Bravo. Is that right?
You're going to do Johnny Bravo.
Johnny Bravo as a Squid Game triangle
character,
triangle guy. Take off the mask and the hood, and you got giant hair flips out.
Yeah, do a little cross. Like a little bit of. I was gonna say cross dressing, but that's not the correct definition of cross dressing.
No.
So yeah,
cool.
But yeah, I mean, again, we didn't really talk much about Sai Byuk, who I just want to talk briefly about. I really love her character. I think the idea of this like North Korean defector it's super cool and super unique, and obviously it's not something that I've ever seen in any TV show or movie, because it's very just like location specific, I guess. And honestly, the actress that plays her, I forget her name. I know she's like a big model. Let me look this up. Jung-Hyuk. Yeah, her. I know she's like a big model, like beautiful woman, and again, like she does such a good job playing this character. And like she's kind of she's not the nicest human being, but again, like what this show does so well is it gives you reason why characters are acting specific ways. Like obviously she wants to get her parents over like the North Korean border, so her brother isn't like left on his own and all of that sort of stuff. And again, you really sympathize with her. And
sorry, her name is Jung-Hyun. There's no a K on the end. That's not only a bad pronunciation, that's just literally not how her name is spelled. Sorry.
You nailed it, man. You nailed it. But yeah, again, like I really like her character, and it's interesting because I think she's like 27 or something. Like I think she's actually like my age in real life, but I don't know what age she's supposed to be in the show. To me, like she seemed like a teenager. Like she seemed young. And it's interesting. You kind of sympathize with her because she seems like a kid surrounded by a bunch of adults. And honestly, I was rooting for her. And the way she dies and when she dies is arguably the most heartbreaking thing in the show. Like I would almost put it above like the alley scene. Like I was shocked when that happens, and my heart hurt when she gets killed off. It's just such a fucked situation, and Sung-woo doing it after she convinces Ji-hun not to kill him is just, it's poetic and it's frustrating and it's depressing, and honestly she did not deserve it, but the execution of that scene of that happening was just absolutely brilliant.
Oh yeah,
and
like
again,
when he's banging on the door and he thinks finally someone's come to help. I thought that was brilliant too, and they're coming out with that ridiculous bow coffin.
yeah,
it's crazy. Yeah, that's really well done. Yeah, like there's so many moments like that. It's just very, very well done in like, most ways. It just it's phenomenal.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think this first season at the very least is top tier television. It's something I would honestly, I mean, ideally anyone listening to this has watched the show, but it's something that I would recommend to practically anyone. I think, despite it being in a totally different language and people needing to read subtitles, ideally, I mean, you can watch it dubbed, but you shouldn't. It's a barrier that's worth overcoming, because this show is just, it's just brilliant. It's phenomenal. And again, I think it deserves the hype that it's getting. And I'm glad something like this is literally the biggest show Netflix has ever released. It's fantastic.
Indeed. I agree.
Yeah.
All right, Adrian, I thank you for joining me for this A Closer Look, our spoiler-filled review of Squid Game. Is there anything else you'd like to add briefly? I think you've kind of said it all, but if there's anything else you'd like to say to the audience before we wrap this up, now's the time.
Well, Simon, there's one last thing I'm going to say, and it's 3 rules. And those rules are that you must keep playing. If you refuse to play, you get eliminated. And if the majority of us decide to quit, we can stop playing.
Indeed. Okay. Well,
and honestly, I vote that we stop this episode of the show. Do you?
I do. So that's the majority.
We are the majority.
Indeed. All right. Well, thank you very much for listening, and have a great week. And we'll see you on our next episode, potentially, episode 68 of Split Focus, a film and TV podcast. And if you have a moment to subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, I'd appreciate it if you do. Thank you, Adrian, for joining me. Thank you, audience. Goodbye.
Take care. Goodbye.